Senator, if you will, please explain your bill to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity. 2064 does away with the current prohibition in the law that prohibits DAs from hiring part-time DAs or assistant DAs, as it were, to help with their caseloads. So what this bill does is simply to remove the prohibition so that it would allow, if funds are available currently to the DA's offices, to hire part-time, what we call legal assistants. But when I first read that term, I thought that was talking like paralegals or things like that. And that's not what this is talking about. This is actually talking about, licensed attorneys who could be hired, most likely retired ADAs or retired district attorneys who could be brought in on a part-time basis to help whittle down, a backlog of cases in a particular circuit district. And it does say one other prohibition is that they would not be able to engage in the private practice of law in order to keep the conflicts from coming into play within the office there. So that's a very short bill and a short explanation for what the bill does. Be happy to answer any questions.
Senator, just to be clear, any source doesn't necessarily put the state on the hook for an appropriation.
That is a great question, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. Any source is defined in Mississippi Code Section 2531.5 as follows. And I'll just read it off. As any source shall include, but not limited to, office-generated funds. That would be like fines that the DA can collect for various purposes. Funds from a county, a combination of counties, a municipality, or combination of municipalities, because in many of these districts, it's multiple counties and multiple jurisdictions of municipalities within that. Any federal funds, private grants, or foundation funds, or by means of an interlocal cooperative agreement authorized in Section 1713.1. So that's the any sources other than state funds that this is talking about.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Do I have a motion? Motion is titled sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Next is Senate Bill 2536, Public Funds Offender Registry. This is Senator England's bill. So if you will, Senator, explain your bill to us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to explain this bill to committee today. This bill is relatively simple. What it does is if a person is convicted of any of the crimes listed under Section 1D, those crimes have to do with embezzlement or defrauding the government or bribery. Once a person is convicted, they will appear on a registry kept at the Department of Public Safety, much like the sex offenders list, but here it is for people who have stolen or embezzled from public funds. Once they are on the list, they will appear on the list for 5 years from the time of conviction or until the time of their release, whichever is the latest. And if they are on the list, they will not be able to work in any positions with the state, county, or municipality in a position of accounting or in a treasury or registrar office or any office where monies are collected or received directly from rate or fee payers. If a person does serve their time that they're sentenced to, and if they pay back any retribution and fines, they can petition the Department of Public Safety to come off of the list, so it's not a permanent list like you would see with the sex offenders list. But obviously, the intent of the bill is to make sure that folks that are stealing money from the state and from the public are not able to go to work in an office where they've already proven themselves not to be trustworthy of working anywhere where monies are collected. So that's what the bill will do. We'll create this registry with the Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Turner Ford, the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates to this petition process. Does DPS already have this type of process in place? Would there be a filing fee associated with the petition? My concern is that for questions about the procedure for this petition.
Yes, thank you, Senator Turner Ford. I spoke with the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, specifically when he noticed that I was interested in this bill. He actually reached out to me and said they keep up with the sex offender registry already, so this would fall right in line and be an easy thing for them to keep up with already on their process. They have all that set up to keep up with the registry.
So do we need to set a filing fee for the petition, or has one already been determined?
I don't have one set, Senator, but in Section 6, we allow the department to promulgate the rules in accordance with the Mississippi Administrative Procedures Law to effectuate for the purposes of this act. So I assume if there are any involved, that will come out during that process.
Is that typical?
I believe so. They didn't mention anything about the need for a filing fee, and I specifically asked the commissioner, but I would be glad to look at that and get back with you on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? Senator Bynum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up with her question, does the division have the authority to set rates and fees?
You know, I'm not sure if they do or not. But I will look into that, and we'll get back with you quickly.
Senator Hobson?
Yes, Senator, I think that's a good question, but the way I would answer that is that we've already had instances in this state, even recently, where members would say steal from a school district or steal from a local utility district and then move over into another area. This would put a registry in place, which number one should act as a deterrent to keep people from doing this. And number two, it'll be easier for those municipalities and counties and the state and departments to look and see that these individuals are convicted. And again, the incentive that this would allow for them to, you know, I'm assuming that folks won't want to appear on this registry. If they pay their monies back and serve the time that they are set to serve, they're able to come off of the list. So that's another thing I was looking at. How can we maybe figure a way to help folks be incentivized to pay the monies they've stolen from the state back? And that's another reason for having this. So I don't think it's an extra level of bureaucracy that wouldn't be effective at preventing this type of action from occurring more in the future. I don't know if they're required to or not, but I do know that I would say lately in the last few years, we've seen some movement away from that with ban the box acts and things like that we've seen come up. We haven't passed those yet, but this would at least put a system in place where folks that have stolen from the public will still be accountable and will still be able to be on a list where their names will be easily identified as somebody. They don't need to be hired in an office of accounting or treasury or registrar's office or something of that nature.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions from the Senator? If not, this is a committee substitute. Do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next
Mr.
is
Chairman.
Thank you. Next is Senate Bill 2371, purchasing law, revised threshold for bid requirement. This is a bill that Senator Kirby has introduced. But I did make a committee sub out of this. And the reason I did that, if you'll remember Friday in our meeting, I presented a bill that would allow reverse auction to be an option for term contracts. As you know, last year, the bill that got passed somehow just said you cannot have reverse auction. So I did a bill and we voted on it and passed it out. What I'd asked our attorney to do this weekend, since these bills are so similar, I asked him to just move that language onto this bill, included with Senator Kirby. And the only thing Senator Kirby is asking for in this bill is raising the first level of requiring a bid from $50,000 to $75,000. as explained to me, inflation has hit us. It's been several years, I think he said since about 2008, since this was initially changed. So therefore, you will see this bill as two bills put together. What my intention is, if this bill passes, I will not bring up the one we passed on Friday to the floor. So with that said, are there any questions? If not, do I have a motion? Motion is titled sufficient to pass. Any sub? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is Senate Bill 2814, the Mississippi Water Quality Commission, created for the purpose of providing oversight of certain water and sewer systems. This bill is presented by Senator Harkins, and we are glad he's here to help explain the bill. Senator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll run through this bill. It's a pretty short bill, but I want to kind of go through each section so everybody understands what the bill's intended to do. Section 1 provides that it is essential for the health and welfare of citizens that local governments and nonprofit entities provide efficient, safe, and reliable water and sewer systems which are compliant with state and federal laws. It creates a Mississippi Water Commission to provide oversight to entities that are not in compliance. Section 2 provides the commission shall have 7 members, 3 members appointed by the governor, one of which must have experience running a public utility, 2 members appointed by the lieutenant governor, one of which must have experience running a public utility, the executive director of the Department of Health ex officio, and the executive director of MDEQ ex officio. Lines 46 through 50, appointments within 30 days. It must meet at least monthly. Their term limitations subject to advice and consent of the Senate, and authorizes per diem, provides MDEQ shall provide staff and resources. Section 3 of the bill provides that local governments or nonprofit entities found to be in violation of any related state or federal law, including the Safe Water Drinking Act, shall report the violation to the commission. It provides that the commission shall provide public notice of the violation. It also provides, and it's kind of the meat of what this is for, is it provides that any local government nonprofit entity which violates the maximum containment level allowed under Safe Water Drinking Act shall provide a copy of all documents provided to the EPA, including a voluntary or compulsory remediation plan. And right now, there are about 13 systems that are at this level of violation. Lines 98 through 110 provide that the commission shall oversee any state funds, excluding ARPA funds, provided to an entity to include requiring a plan for expenditures of the funds and authorizing all expenditures before funds are obligated or spent, provides that state funds shall not be used for an administrative expense or consulting fees. Section 4 provides that no member of the commission shall be subject to personal liability when acting in good faith, and Section 5 is a severability clause. And that is the explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, on lines 26 and 29, section 2, you mentioned having some qualifications. I don't believe those are stated in the law. Do we need to look at that
Probably,
now?
yeah. I think I'm supposed to be in the committee sub, but yes, if it's not in there, then it needs to be in there. As far as the one appointee of the governor and lieutenant governor must have experience running a public utility.
So can I have that as amendment, one of my members?
Sure.
Yes.
Is that not what it says on line 40?
38 through 40.
Okay,
It's just not in the line up here. Okay.
thank you, Senator Blunt. And sorry about that.
Fine.
Senator Harkins. Questions of Senator Harkins? Senator Hill.
Is there a particular reason why we're just not extending more gravity to the PSC rather than creating a new commission? Because if you look at the old statute, it mentions water under their purview. I believe it's been a long time since I read it.
Yeah, I think it's just an effort to kind of really try to hone in on some of the problems that are out there with some of these entities that have reached kind of a critical mass as far as the problems with their water systems. And before any state funds are sent, a commission will kind of oversee and have the authority to make sure that they're utilizing those funds to fix the problem and not maybe to do other projects within their system, making sure that they're utilizing the funds to actually start attacking the issues at hand.
I may be remembering incorrectly, but do we need to take the PSC statute and remove water from that? Because if I remember correctly, it says something about water under their purview. So
We
have
can look
any
into it.
statutes maybe?
I'm not aware of any, but I'm not saying that you're
I
incorrect.
may be wrong.
I'm not gonna bet against you, but I'd be happy to try to work with council to make sure that's not a problem.
I just, I think my opinion is I want it straightened out too, but we already have a commission in place. And we spent quite a bunch of money already on this commission. But I understand what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Turner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How, the language at line 111, it says that the commission may accept and expend such monies. How will this language be triggered? Who will determine if the commission will accept or how that decision will be made?
I think it's, the entities will apply for state funds that the legislature would hand down, and then the commission would, I guess, take those monies into consideration and make sure that they're being spent and obligated properly.
So is the decision to be made by the commission? Or
It's
is
to
it
be made by the commission.
local government if they want to opt in? Is that
Well,
an option as
if they
well?
want to apply for state funds and they are in this category of violating the maximum containment level allowed, then if they want state funds to help fix some of the problems, this commission is going to have to be intimately involved in what corrective measures are taking place and how the money's spent. The state's going to give them to fix their system or give them money outside of ARPA. This is just normal state funds throughout the normal course of events.
That language specified in the bill that if the local government applies for funds from the state, that they will fall under the purview of this commission.
I think it sets it up where if they have violated the maximum containment level allowed, that's what they will definitely be under the purview of the commission.
So is it optional?
No, it's not optional if you've violated the maximum allowable.
No, is it the commission being responsible for expending the funds? Is that optional?
It's not optional.
It's just the authority to use the funds to operate. That's what council's saying.
Is there a reason the word may was used?
Which line?
111.
Council says it's granting authority.
So this commission is only, the oversight of the commission is only triggered if there is a violation of maximum containment level.
Yes.
Yes.
So if there's a violation of the maximum containment level, their water supply.
They shall provide all documents provided to the EPA, including a voluntary or compulsory remediation plan, and any monies that they ask for from the state to help in fixing those problems. The commission would just oversee and make sure that that's what those funds are being used for.
So if they don't ask for money, then this oversight of the commission is not triggered.
It's my understanding, as long as there's not state dollars.
Since there are no state dollars involved, it would only happen if we appropriate state dollars to a project.
To a project.
To a system.
To a system. In other words, if one of the cities or entities on this list asked for $50 million from the state of Mississippi, and we did that through appropriation, then the commission would step in and make sure the state was getting what they paid. Thank you, Senator. Other questions? Senator Brand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering how, by the way, I'm definitely for ensuring we got reliable utility service all over the state, but just
how will this commission work with Mississippi Rural Water Association, which governs, as you know, a lot of those nonprofit rural water systems that comprise much of our water service for the state?
I imagine they already have certain things that they're probably required to do, but if they're gonna ask for state dollars to fix issues within their system, then they're gonna have to go through the commission like anybody else would.
You know, the Rural Water Association, they actually provide training to all of our nonprofit water associations all throughout the state. I wonder, was there any consideration given to them as maybe a spot on this board to help guide those systems that may be in trouble, that are asking for monies, to make sure that the appropriate repairs are being made to those systems?
Nothing had, I mean, I don't think that's nobody mentioned anything about that, starting out. It was more of a member commission, with the Department of Health and the DEQ on there, but no, to your question, I don't think there was really any consideration. Nobody made that request.
Thank you, Senator. Please remember, in part of the bill, ARPA funds that we will be matching if the bill that we have recommended comes out will be excluded from this bill because we have the EQ already watching how those ARPA funds are being spent. Also, this bill is a committee substitute, and it does have a reverse repeater. Senator, do you have any additional?
I guess my question was, if any of these, water authorities have to, send a notice anytime that they violate, any act, that they have to send a notice to the commission. So if they're not applying for state funds, that doesn't want to be paid any attention to, I guess.
I still think,
Because, I mean, there's all kinds of times that they send letters out for water. If they have a line break, they're gonna have E. coli or whatever in there. They're gonna send a full water notice out. I mean, that happens constantly. Anytime there's a break, whether it's construction or anything like that, they're gonna get a notice out.
Yeah.
So, and
we'll
that's
check on that.
basically said contaminant level. And I think I'm not sure, but I think that's
I'll-
what triggers the.
Yeah,
full
I'll
water
check on that
notice.
to see kind of what the intent was. I don't think it's to notify every time, stuff. So I think this is like
That's
when they have,
basically what it says.
Yeah.
It says any local government or nonprofit entity. So, I mean, basically, that's anybody that provides water or sewer, if they basically have to put out any kind of notice that their contaminant level is high, y'all gonna get those. They're gonna be required by law to send y'all those notices, whether they're applying for state money or not, under section 3. It looks like.
well, the way it's my understanding is that if they're found to be in violation of any related state law or federal law, and I think that's ultimately how sensitive does that get? I don't know. And we may need to look into that and see if it's any little bitty, hair trigger that happens. Do they have to send in a notice to the commission and commission provide public notice to everybody? I don't know.
I would just request that you contact Kirby Mayfield or water, because I
talked to him.
believe that what you're saying in here requires anytime they put out a boil water notice, that they have to send y'all some kind of statement.
I'll ask.
Any other questions? This is a committee sub. Do I have any motion? Title sufficiently passed, committee sub. Thank you. Title sufficient passes. The committee sub is the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next is Senate Bill number 2280. This has been referred from corrections to our committee and passed for review. This bill only extends a repeater on intensive supervision program and electronic home detention. All we're doing is following the lead, and it extends the repeater to June 30 of 2026. Are there any questions? Do I have a motion?
Sufficient pass.
Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Next is Senate Bill 2338. This is DHS Fraud Investigation Unit requiring reporting to the state auditor. We currently have a bill, this is a committee substitute, that requires that this information be given to the Department of Public Service. What has happened is the state auditors asked that he be included in that notification. So this bill does that, is to ensure that he is notified. If someone in DHS knows there's fraud through their fraud division, they have to notify him. Are there any questions? Do I have a motion? That motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you very much. Next is Senate Bill 2066, District Attorney's increase in fees. And also, it will include, there's been a committee sub, so it will include investigators. If you go to, here's the first instance. If you go to line 153, you'll see that from and after January 1, 2023, salary for DAs will be $134,000. Current salary is $129,500, so that is an increase of, I believe, $3,500. Also in this bill is the investigators that work for the DA offices. Their salary will rise to $63,000. So there's a $3,500 increase there. That's all the bill does. Are there any questions? Do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is Senate Bill 2803. This is a bill that increases the salaries of sheriffs. As you know, we have several categories of different sized counties, but the bill all does is raise the salary in each category $6,000. That's how much raise we would be giving them to go into each category. It doesn't matter what the size of the county is. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes. They have to, no, they would just have to start paying the same. Mr. Hill?
Did anybody do a compilation as to, how much raises on the DAs, the investigators, and the sheriffs? Does anybody have an idea about what the median county is gonna get here?
DAs and the investigators from the state.
They get us the sheriff.
Yes.
And there's coming a supervisor.
Actually, there's a supervisor bill in this.
Is there any more raises in the that y'all know of?
There's an omnibus bill in the House. Any other questions? Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass committee sub. Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill number 2647. This is a bill to combine two of our boards, cosmetology and barbering. And I believe Mr. Booth from the peer committee is here. This is a bill that has been recommended by the peer committee. So, Mr. Booth, if you would explain the bill to us. Yes, sir. Certainly recognize you. Glad to have you with us today.
My voice definitely does not Bill 2647 merges the Board of Cosmetology and the Board of Barber Examiners to create a single Board of Cosmetology and Barbering. The board would consist of 9 members who represent the various professions that fall under the purview of the board, as well as a consumer representative and the state health officer or his or her designee. The various professions that I'm talking about are cosmetologists, manicurists, estheticians, and barbers. The bill creates term staggering for the board members as well as places a 2-term limit on members. After the staggering period, the term period would be 6 years. The experience qualifications to sit on the board would be 5 years of active practice in an occupation regulated by the board. The bill creates an executive director position for the Board of Cosmetology and Barbering, and that person would be appointed by the board and serve at the will and pleasure of the board. The bill also creates an apprenticeship program to qualify for licensure, with the number of hours required to be double what the person is required to do when they go to school for these professions, and that would vary based upon the profession. The bill reduces the age and education requirement from 17 with a high school diploma to 16 with a 10th grade education, which is in alignment with other states. The bill eliminates the English fluency requirement for licensure. It also requires the State Personnel Board to develop standards for state agencies to use for executive director comp time, so when they can receive comp time. So that's the bill is introduced. We do have some amendments that we believe are important to the implementation of the bill, and I'm going to go through these. We do have copies for you as well. The first amendment involves the composition of the board. The bill reads that the board would have 9 members, but in terms of who those members are, the bill only lists 8. So the amendment adds a cosmetology or barber school owner to the list of board members. Second amendment involves the board leadership. Current law requires that a board member have at least 1 year of service on the board to qualify as board president. We merged the board, but there is the potential that none of the current board members will be that all of them will be replaced, so no one would be eligible to serve as board president. So the amendment changes the date that the governor designates a member to serve as president of the board from the date that's in the bill of July 1st, 1997 to July 1st, 2022. So that would take care of that 1 year experience requirement. The third amendment deals with schools. The current law says no member of the board shall be connected in any way with any school where cosmetology is taught. But the bill proposal calls for a cosmetology or barber school owner as well as an instructor to sit on the board. So that obviously means they're connected to a school. So the amendment is to add an exception for those sitting on the board representing those specific things. I'm going to shift and talk about the rest of the amendments on the sheet. When we look back at the bill and merging these professions, we saw some inconsistencies between the professions that didn't really need to be there. The bill is introduced, reduces the age and education requirement for licensure from, like I mentioned, 17 with a high school education to 16 with a 10th grade education, but only for one profession. We think it should include all of the professions regulated by the new board. The bill is introduced, removes the English fluency requirement for cosmetologists and manicurists, but not the other 2 professions. So again, the amendment kind of calls for consistency in that area. And then lastly, there are a few amendments to add an apprenticeship program for estheticians and barbers. The original bill had those programs in for cosmetologists and manicurists, but not for the other 2. So again, a consistency issue to take care of there. So that's an explanation of the bill and the amendment.
First, do I have a motion that we take all these changes and put them into one amendment? And do I have a senator that would make that motion? All right, have the motion. Is there any discussion about the amendments we are making? Senator Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you could restate the amendment proposed for the English fluency requirement. Sure.
So the English fluency requirement, the amendment is to address all of the professions, removing the English fluency from all of the professions regulated by the new board. The bill is introduced, does that for cosmetologists and manicurists only. So, and that was just, when it was all put together, it just didn't get into the other sections.
So your amendment moves it from all.
Right,
Okay,
correct.
that's what I'm saying.
Other questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Amendment is added. And now we're back on the committee sub. Questions? Senator Turner Ford.
Mr. Chairman, you estimate all savings
Savings would have to do with administrative cost savings, I believe. Merging two boards, you're gonna have, potentially less administrative people serving, also one director increased to two. So that's, staffing is where you're gonna save. But I don't have an estimate for you.
I have a question. In many shops, you'll have barbers and cosmetologists in the same building, sitting side or working side by side. Will this not make it easier for one agency to oversee that at one time and have quit having so many people come by to stop and visit? Will that not be one of the savings maybe of this bill?
Great, yeah. Time saving efficiency. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. Other questions, Senator Blackmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just explain for the committee why Beer is recommending this bill?
There's several reasons. The primary reason that we recommended it is because of the overlap in the scopes of practice. They're just so similar. The only thing that really differentiates cosmetologists from the barber, our understanding is barbers can shave and cosmetologists can do other things. They all have to do with, hair and things. So, it can be confusing for the public to figure out who's a barber, who's a cosmetologist, which boards we need to be licensed by, things like that. So the overlap in scope is really why we recommended the merger. But there are a lot of reasons.
Is there any more questions? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say in addition to that, the poor management and the complaints that we've received up here from cosmetologists and the poor management of that board for years has been a source of phone calls for many of us. And I think perhaps if we weren't getting all these complaints and reading about mismanagement in the paper, then maybe we read this bill. And I think that's got to be part of the discussion too. I mean, I've seen some of our colleagues normally quiet. People get lots of complaints, and we've heard them for a long time. And so I'm happy to see it.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, part of this, Beer did a study, took a look at the cosmetology board based upon some complaints, and based upon their findings, this is the recommendation.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion title sufficient to pass as amended.
The motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The bill passes. Next will be Senate Bill 2087, open meetings law. Public bodies require all official meetings to be broadcast via video. This is a Senator Boyd bill. So Senator, if you will explain your bill to us.
What this bill does is it requires all state public meetings and public bodies to live stream their meetings. This is a bill that was requested by a number of people in my district. We're at least 2.5 hours away from the Capitol. Some of the other agencies that meet further south, we're a great distance away. And so during the pandemic, one of the things that people got used to was to being able to watch a lot of these committee hearings. A number of our state agencies already do this. In fact, most do. But this would bring those other state agencies in line that don't do this right now. I've had questions about, well, can't they just go read the minutes? Those minutes are usually not posted until the next committee, once the board has approved of that. So there's a lag time in seeing that information. So this puts transparency, of all of those boards and committees to make sure that they are being transparent to the public. And we have, right now people distrust the government. So this is one step in letting people know what's going on and put greater trust in what's going on in our state government.
We'll point out, some of our agencies, and many of them, are doing that now. This just requires that everyone do it. Do you have any questions of Senator Boyd, Senator Hill?
I don't guess y'all have had power out for 4 to 6 weeks with a hurricane like we have down in South Mississippi. But several years ago, and I'm gonna get to the question, several years ago, we passed some changes to the public meetings law. And this bill would apply to any public body, not just the legislative agency. It would apply to any political subdivision, municipality, or county, the way it's written, the way it's drafted. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. We actually have, we have exempted counties and municipalities from this bill. If you'll read over on line, I believe it's 52 and 53, Jeff, does it start there? We have exempted counties and municipalities so that it only applies to state agencies. But we felt like this would be first better for the state to do this first before we ask counties and municipalities to do this.
That was my only concern. Is a lot of times we might not have electricity or computer service for a month or more. I hadn't gotten to that bottom line, but that's a good catch right there. That we didn't put municipalities in it first.
Questions? Senator Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification. You did mention, I think, school districts and public hospitals are also exempted. See some of the here, but I just heard you say counties and municipalities. Am I correct in understanding that all political except for the state agencies are excluded?
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass committee sub. Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 more bills to consider, but if you allow us, we will need to go to the chamber now. I will adjourn the meeting, and we will take up these 2 bills. Tomorrow, we will be meeting. Please look at the calendar. It will be late in the afternoon to take care of double referred bills. So until then, do I have a motion? Rise and report.